Did Alexander the Great have any children? I would like to, before I start this reading, remind you that in the Old Testament, in the book of Daniel, the Archangel Gabriel gave a prophecy of Alexander the Great, that there would be a small horn coming from the north of Greece and putting the end to the big horn of the Persians, that is the king of putting the end to the Persian Empire, and that this young king would only reign for 10 years. He would leave his empire to his 4 generals and not to his children. This is exactly what happened. And now his generals were basically his kindergarten buddies, and he grew up with them and they loved each other very much. Alexander the Great died at an age of 32, leaving behind a vast empire. Did he have any heirs to rule in the power vacuum that followed his death? He did have heirs, but let's see what happened to them. Alexander the Great ascended the Macedonian throne of Greece at age 20 and died just 12 years later, having conquered one of the largest empires in the ancient world. We're talking about the Persian Empire that had not been defeated by anybody up to that point, only the Greeks. Now, during that time, did he father any children? And in the power vacuum following his death, what happened to those heirs? In a word, yes, Alexander had 1 and possibly even 2 children, both sons. One, known as Alexander IV, was his son with his wife Roxana. Roxana was as we know, the daughter of King Darius. He took her as his wife. And the queen of Darius, he called her mother. So he took Roxana as his wife and he had a child by her, Alexander IV. The other, known as Hercules of Macedon, was his son with Varsine, his mistress. Roxana was the daughter of the chief in Bactria, an area in Central Asia. Alexander's forces captured her while campaigning in the region, and she married him in around 327 BC. Wrote Ian Worthington, a professor of ancient history at Macquarie University, Sydney, Australia, in his book Alexander the Great, a Reader, Routledge 2012. But Alexander did not live to see their son. She was pregnant with Alexander IV when Alexander died in Babylon in 323 BC. Hercules of Macedon was born to a mistress named Varsine, a Persian noblewoman around 327 BC, making him about 4 years older than Alexander IV. Some scholars in modern times question whether Alexander was actually the father of Varsine, as Alexander never formally acknowledged the child, but there appears to be a consensus among some modern scholars that Hercules was his biological son. A few historians are skeptical of Alexander's paternity, but I do not share their view, said Joseph Roisman, an emeritus professor of classics at Colby College in Maine. Why didn't they become king? After Alexander the Great died of a mysterious illness at the age of 32, there was no clear successor for his massive empire, which stretched from the Balkans to modern-day Pakistan. His wife was pregnant with Alexander IV, although at the time it was not known if the child was a boy or a girl. Hercules of Macedon was not legitimate, making his claim to the throne more difficult. The boy was never a contender to succeed him because he was illegitimate and the son of a mistress, Worthington told Life Science in an email. Now, additionally, both Roxana and Varsine were of Asian ancestry, which some of Alexander's troops did not like. According to the ancient Roman Alexander historian Quintus Curtius, both sons were proposed as potential heirs to the throne in a meeting of the generals at cavalry class, but the army rank and file infantry rejected both because the mothers were Asian. Carol King, associate professor of classics at Memorial University, Newfoundland, said, Aridaeus, the half-brother of Alexander the Great, became king and Alexander IV was made a co-ruler after he was born. However, neither king could rule in practice, of course. King said Aridaeus had some form of mental impairment that made it difficult for him to exercise power, while Alexander IV was just an infant. As a result, all became pawns in the wars of the successors, Alexander's powerful generals, as they fought each other for control of the empire, and all were murdered, King said, referring to Aridaeus and Alexander's children. Alexander the Great's mother, Olympias, took on a significant role in the power struggle. In 317 BC, she agreed to become the guardian of Alexander IV, and with the help of an army led by a general named Polyperchon, captured Aridaeus and had him killed, wrote Robin Waterfield, an independent scholar with a background in classics, in his book Dividing the Spoils, the War for Alexander the Great's Empire. However, a force led by a general named Cassander attacked Olympias, that is, Alexander's mother, and captured her along with Alexander IV in 316 BC and had Olympias, the mother of Alexander, killed. Alexander IV and Roxana then found themselves captives of Cassander, who effectively controlled Macedonia as a king. That's northern Greece. Cassander did not want any competition for the throne, so he had Alexander IV and Roxana killed around 309 BC to prevent the teenager heir from coming of age and potentially taking power. Heracles of Macedon did not fare any better. The general Polyperchon took Alexander's illegitimate son captive, and after reaching a deal with Cassander, had him killed shortly after Alexander IV's death, Waterfield wrote. You can imagine, this is ridiculous, killing everybody off, killing each other off. And this is on Live Science by Owen Jarvis. Please leave your comments, and thank you for your support. Please support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.